Disclaimer: I neither agree nor disagree with any of these theories, nor claim to know for certain what or where the luminaries really are or how they work, nor claim these people know for certain either. What or where they aren't or can't be is another story. I received an email after parts 1 and 2 showing Lake Pukaki, Canterbury, New Zealand, at 4 a.m. on December 4th, showing how the sun was southeast before it visually rose in the east and then appeared to set southwest, like this, saying, all November rises south of east and sets south of west. When can I expect my apology? Never, I bet. Since you have proven yourself to be dumb as rocks, can you at least not say my name ever again, garbage human? A bit of the pot calling the kettle black from what I've heard, but that's none of my business. But you're right, I'm sorry. I apologize for falsely assuming you at least understood your own globe model enough where I didn't think I had to explain your fallacy to you like a child, so I will correct my mistake now. The heliocentric globe model says the sun is allegedly 109 times larger than the Earth, which looks great here, but allegedly 93 million miles away from Earth. Yet you won't find a single cartoon drawing on the internet that shows this in scale, because if the Earth has a diameter of 7,926 miles, then the Earth must be only 3 times that distance, or 23,778 miles away from the sun, when there should be 11,733 and a half of those yellow circles between, if ever drawn in scale. Not 3 of them. This ancient form of black magic is called neurographics, programming the brain through art. Thou shalt not make graven images. They do the same when they draw these cartoons, explaining why you can only see the top of a boat from a lighthouse point A to a boat at point D from 20 miles away, due to the Earth's alleged curvature, and hope you're too stupid to notice they drew nearly 1/8 of the total alleged Earth curve in the 20 miles between the two objects, and drew the boat and lighthouse thousands of miles too tall to scale of the drawn curve between. We all see and experience the sun's rays as fanning out in a pyramid, crepuscular like this, from a local nearby light source. Never like this, from an alleged burning space fireball, allegedly 109 times bigger than the Earth and 11,733 Earth diameters farther away from it. But since you can't have your cake and eat it too, you have to accept the sun's rays must be directly spread straight and evenly over the Earth from that alleged size and distance, and not crepuscular, if you stick by your heliocentric globe model. Even though reality shows once again otherwise. It is well known and verifiable in all almanacs that the visible light in the sky we call the sun loops between the ecliptic belt between the outer yellow Tropic of Capricorn on the December 21st winter solstice into the red equator on March 21st, the spring equinox, then into the summer orange Tropic of Cancer on the June 21st summer solstice, and then back out to the red equator on the September 21st fall equinox, and back out again, looping like clockwork out and in every year. Let's simply verify this for this guy and the cake eaters in the comments section who don't seem to get this fact. From wherever you are standing, your zenith is leaning back, cricking your neck, and looking directly above you at 90 degrees to see a heavenly luminary like the sun. Your altitude is what degree or angle between your horizon, 0 degrees straight across, and your zenith straight above your head, you see the heavenly luminary like the sun. Your azimuth is just pointing your compass to the north, there, drawing 360 degrees in a circle around you and seeing how many degrees clockwise around that circle the heavenly luminary you are looking at is relative to north. So from where this guy is standing, he is seeing the sun at 45 degrees altitude, halfway between looking straight up in the sky at his zenith directly above his head and looking straight out at his horizon across the flat ground. And his compass says north is there. So the sun is where the red arrow ends, 135 degrees east of north, clockwise, around the 360-degree circle around him. That's his azimuth. Pretty simple. So if the light we call the sun crosses over the Tropic of Capricorn on the December 21st winter solstice, everyone living directly under it should have to lean back and crick their neck up to their 90-degree zenith to see the sun straight overhead at their solar noon. And the same with the people living on the Tropic of Cancer on their June 21st summer solstice, and the same with the people living on the equator twice a year, on both March 21st and September 21st equinoxes, as the sun passes over them between the tropics. So the Tropic of Capricorn is at 232609 south latitude, and here is Rubyvale, Australia, at 232509 south latitude, just about 30 odd miles only north of the Tropic of Capricorn. And sure enough, on their December 21st winter solstice, at their solar noon there, you can see that the sun is at 90 degrees zenith right above their head, as it should be. And the reason the sun is at 180 degrees south azimuth is because they are 30 odd miles north of the Tropic of Capricorn. So they have to turn around and face 180 degrees opposite their north compass bearing and then look up 90 degrees because the sun is actually 30 odd miles south of them as it travels overhead. Not any further south than that, as the cake eaters claim, or the altitude would be less than 90 degrees zenith if they had to look out at a farther away angle than straight over their heads. The inner or northern Tropic of Cancer is at 232609 north latitude. Here we have Ujjain, India, at 231855 north latitude, so about 7 or 8 miles south of the Tropic of Cancer, so pretty much dead smack underneath it and on it. And sure enough, here on the June 21st summer solstice in Ujjain, at their solar noon, the sun is at 90 degrees zenith just above their head, as it should be, and 0 degrees north for their azimuth, because they are just dead south of the Tropic of Cancer, so they have to look north 7 miles and then straight up over their head. And lastly, obviously the equator is 0 latitude, and here we have Nzamileke, Africa, just 2 miles north of the equator, at 00149 north, and sure enough, on the March 21st equinox at solar noon, 90 degrees zenith above their head, 0 degrees azimuth, and remember, this has to match the September 21st equinox, and sure enough, 90 degrees zenith right above their head, 0 degrees north azimuth. I will even go back to Rubyvale, Australia before and after the December 21st winter solstice and show you. From December 1st through the 17th, you can see the altitude angle in the sky at solar noon keeps rising or getting higher in the sky, meaning the sun is coming from the north equator and getting closer and closer in south latitude to them each day, hence looking higher and higher in the sky to see it. Then boom, it sits there at 90 degrees zenith right above their heads from December 18th to the 25th, and then starts to go back down again in altitude, meaning back north towards the equator again, not more south. Again, Cake Eater himself rightly said in parts 1 and 2, what happens in latitude stays in latitude. Every single place on that latitude, all the way around the earth, is the exact same daylight on that day. Meaning on each of these latitude lines on the days I just showed you, or any latitude lines in between them, on any day in between them, Everyone living under that same latitude line or on it has to have the light in the sky called the sun go directly over their head at 90 degrees zenith on that day. If these guys have to look straight up to see the sun in November or early December, then so do these guys, and so do these guys. The same goes for anyone else on any same latitude line the sun is passing over on any given day. So here's what Cake Eater doesn't understand. At Lake Pukaki, New Zealand on December 4th, the sun's rising and setting angles are relative to the sun's position at Lake Pukaki's solar noon, where people there point a compass to due north, and they'll know it's solar noon when the sun is directly between them and the North Pole on their compass needle. Those angles are not relative to Lake Pukaki's geographical location on the ground itself. It does not mean the visual sun was straight overhead Lake Pukaki at 90 degrees zenith on December 4th and literally came from the southeast below New Zealand's latitude line and set southwest below New Zealand's latitude line, as this blatant neurographic falsely misleads the unthinking person by design. I'll prove it. On December 4th, the sun has not yet made its way down to the Tropic of Capricorn line 2 weeks later. It is still a little north of it, where the red zones are. Here is Swakopmund, Namibia, just slightly south of where the sun should be crossing over directly overhead on December 4th. At 22:40:35 south latitude. And sure enough, on December 4th, the solar noon azimuth is 0 north, just north of them barely, and the altitude for solar noon is 89.6 zenith, just slightly north of above their heads. Later that same exact day, the sun passes just north of Rio de Janeiro at 22:54:35 south latitude. As you can see, December 4th, solar noon 0 degrees north of it at 89.4 degrees north of them, not quite zenith overhead. What happens in latitude stays in latitude. The sun cannot pass over Lake Pukaki way down here on December 4th, as this neurographic claims, and then magically teleport north and pass over Australia, Swakopmund, and Rio later that same exact day, while impossibly setting southwest of Lake Pukaki at the exact same time. And it doesn't. Had Cake Eater simply bothered to open the rest of the day between the red sunrise and sunset times and directions, he'd see on December 4th at Lake Pukaki's solar noon, the sun azimuth was north of Lake Pukaki, as it should be, and its altitude angle in the sky was way up north of Lake Pukaki and lower in the sky at only 68 degrees north, not 90 degrees azimuth straight above their head. Here, right where it should be and has to be, on its way across that latitude line with the others. But obviously what he's really confused about as a globie is this. How is the sun rising at azimuth 120 degrees east-southeast and setting azimuth 237 degrees west-southwest? One of many combined reasons for this is because those angles have nothing to do with Lake Pukaki's geographical location on the ground, because the visual sun is nowhere near Lake Pukaki at solar noon on December 4th, as I've shown. It's over 1,472 miles north of it, north of even the Tropic of Capricorn. They have partly to do with the rise and set angles relative to where the sun is at Pukaki's solar noon, which is way up here in latitude where it has to be, nowhere near Lake Pukaki on the ground. Make note, December 4th, 5:50 a.m. sunrise, 1:29 p.m. solar noon, 9:09 p.m. sunset. Well, there's Lake Pukaki, New Zealand. The sun is here at their 1:29 p.m. solar noon And when the sun sets for them at 9:09 p.m. on December 4th, the sun is provably up here just north of the Tropic of Capricorn and just east of Madagascar, nowhere near west-southwest of Lake Pukaki, New Zealand. And then they have their night. And then when the sun is finally here, still north of the Tropic of Capricorn and just off the west coast of South America, is when it rises at 5:50 a.m. the next day for Lake Pukaki. Again, nowhere near east-southeast of New Zealand. Imagine the mental gymnastics it takes to claim that on the same day everyone on this orange line is provably seeing their solar noon sun at 90 degrees zenith right above their heads. The sun really actually rose southeast of Lake Pukaki, New Zealand, shot up to the Tropic of Capricorn to give everyone in Australia their zenith solar noon, shot way back down here to give New Zealand their south-southwest sunset before slamming on the brakes, shooting way back up here so Africa can have its zenith solar noon, then shot way down south of Antarctica so that Rothera, 4 degrees longitude west of Vernadsky, could have its 2:10 a.m. sunrise in UTC plus 3 time zone first, loops backward so it can give Vernadsky in its UTC plus 3 time zone sunrise second, despite being 120 miles east of Rothera, then shoots all the way up here so Rio and everyone on that line in South America can have their 90 degrees zenith solar noons, slams on the brakes at New Zealand sunrise, then shoots way down south so it can rise southeast of Lake Pukaki, New Zealand the next day and do it again. Well, if the sun allegedly moves because the Earth spins towards it, to follow that absurd path every day, the Earth would have to constantly wobble violently south to north, north to south, stop spinning several times, go backward once a day, and we'd all be dead from non-stop cataclysmic tidal waves. Then they hit you with some really strange cake eater logic and say it's the Earth's 23-degree tilt that is causing it. At least they acknowledge the sun moving between the tropical ecliptic belt, but while in the one breath, they allege the sun is 109 times larger than the Earth, 93 million miles away, and its rays are direct, in the other breath, those rays magically concentrate in a narrow belt in the middle and spread out over a wider area at the top and bottom. And so in September and March, when the Earth is on the side of the alleged orbit, that narrow belt shines right over the equator, and that's why those people see the sun 90 degrees zenith straight overhead, but not everyone else, though, from the same 93 million miles away, also with direct rays. But then in June, the tilt is facing the sun, and the narrow area hits above the equator at the northern Tropic of Cancer. And in December or January, when the Earth is on the other side of the alleged orbit, the tilt makes the narrow belt hit below the equator and the Tropic of Capricorn. But let's double check that. Remember, tilt the alleged globe any way you want, any degree you want. Latitude lines like the tropics and equator always run exactly east to west, not northeast to southwest, etc., because they claim to draw them in alignment to the alleged spin direction, not the alleged tilt direction. An equator means exactly halfway between the farthest north and farthest south on both models. Well, let's start with Lake Pukaki, New Zealand, December 4th, with this alleged narrow direct sunbelt rising in the southeast of New Zealand in the morning and setting in the west-southwest after sunset. The yellow tilted vertical line along the alleged Earth tilt is due geographic north-south longitude. The orange is the Tropic of Cancer, red in the middle the equator, and at the bottom green the Tropic of Capricorn, and we know the sun is right there, just north of Capricorn and just west of South America on December 4th at New Zealand's 5:50 a.m. sunrise. So New Zealand better damn well come around this turn north of that for that to be rising southeast of Lake Pukaki, at least here or higher. and then it better damn well make its way down this yellow crooked line to have that sun 1,472 miles north of it at Lake Pukaki's 1:19 p.m. solar noon, or the globe has a big problem. Let's mark it and see. Houston, the globe has a big problem. That's New Zealand right there in the yellow circle southeast of Australia over Scamptarctica. Let's back it up. New Zealand had to rotate in at least our red marker arrow or higher north to make the sun southeast of it at its sunrise, but it came in way too far south of where it had to. And obviously this doesn't work on the globe model. And we have a bigger problem as it rotates around to its 9:09 p.m. sunset time when the sun is just east of Madagascar there, way west northwest of New Zealand, not setting west southwest. But the final globe death blow comes next. Because even the globe acknowledges that the sun is even more north, all the way up on the equator, for both the September 21st and March 21st equinoxes, which Cake Eater didn't bother to check, but I did. As I showed you already with Nzamalihe, Africa, literally just under 7 miles north of the equator, having a 90 degrees zenith solar noon straight up over their heads on both September 21st here and March 21st here, proving the visual light we call the sun is indeed traveling across the equator latitude line both equinox days. Lake Pukaki on those 2 days delivers the absolute death blow to the globe. Here you can see Lake Pukaki, New Zealand on the September 21st equinox at their solar noon sees the sun at only 45 degrees north altitude, halfway between their north horizon on the ground and their zenith straight up ahead, hence so visually low in the sky, confirming it is indeed way up north of them over the equator. But if you notice here on September 21st, before actual visual sunrise in the north, the sun still approaches them from south-southeast and east to southeast, and then leaves after visual sunset at west-southwest and south-southwest. And here again on the March 21st equinox, the exact same. Solar noon is still at 45 degrees altitude, 0 degrees north azimuth, way up north on the equator, but still approaches before sunrise from south-southeast and east-southeast, and it leaves after sunset at west-southwest and south-southwest. Let's note again, March 21st sunrise time 7:42 a.m., solar noon 6 hours later at 1:46 in the afternoon, sunset 7:49 p.m. So now you're supposed to swallow the globe whopper that though the sun is provably all the way up here on the equator, both September 21st and March 21st, at a much later 7:42 a.m. sunrise, because the sun is much farther north, somehow this sun is also still approaching New Zealand from south-southeast of it, but still somehow ends up 45 degrees angular north of it at Lake Pukaki's solar noon on March 21st. That means now New Zealand better rotate around this ball at least this high or higher at its 7:42 a.m. sunrise to have that equatorial sun south-southeast of it, and better hurry its ass all the way down this yellow arrow and only 6 hours later to have its solar noon 46 degrees altitude north of there. I'll put the spot marker up. Sorry, New Zealand is clearly way too far southwest of the equatorial sun for that sun to be approaching it from the southeast on the failed globe model. The sun would clearly be northeast on a globe. Tilt or no tilt, Latitude lines run due east-west parallel to each other and perpendicular and relative to geographical north. And obviously to claim later that same night, with the sun now provably up over the equator at Lake Pukaki's 7:49 p.m. sunset, that sun is somehow magically southwest of New Zealand is so ludicrous it beggars belief. It would clearly be setting northwest of New Zealand if we lived on a globe. But those southern sunrise and sunset angles to solar noon are very real and very provable, despite being impossible on a globe. So we cannot live on a globe, and Fantasy Island, therefore, cannot exist. Of course, there will be panic-stricken cake eaters who claim the Earth tilt should not be this way, but rather this way, falsely thinking this solves their impossibility dilemma. That would mean the sun on the June 21st summer solstice would have to be 90 degrees azimuth straight overhead the people living on the southern Tropic of Capricorn in southern South America and northern Australia. And we know for a fact their southern summer is in December and January, not June and July. And Florida and the people living on the northern Tropic of Cancer would have to be having their summer in December and January instead of June and July, which is provably the opposite in reality. Sorry, cake eaters, your globe does not work. This does, however, work on both the physical flat Earth model and the metaphysical etheric Earth toroidal model. On the flat Earth, east and west are not straight lines like on a globe. They curve in a circle around the plane from either direction of where the observer is. So relative to the solar noon sun position for Lake Pukaki, New Zealand there, the sun is doing this, curving around the same east-west latitude line from Lake Pukaki's solar noon to their sunset, whereas on a globe's east to west coordinates, it would look like this. But on the flat Earth, north just means closer to the North Pole in a latitude ring than from where it started or where you are observing from. So you may falsely say, well, if Lake Pukaki is here and the North Pole is that way, and their sunset is also kind of that same way, isn't that northwest of them? No, because north means a latitude circle inside of that yellow circle closer to the North Pole, which the sun never does. The sunset point is still on the same exact yellow west latitude circle as where it was at their solar noon, even though it looks northwest to us looking down relative to facing the North Pole from there. So that green line between Lake Pukaki's solar noon and sunset represents true northwest, because anywhere on that yellow line between is still just plain old west. And what is the opposite of north? Obviously south. So if that green line is northwest of Lake Pukaki's solar noon, it is clear that position 0 is right on the green northwest line, and position 1, the purple arrow, is farther away from the green northwest line from solar noon position 0, and then position 4, the light blue line, is even farther away from the north green line than both of those. And since the yellow line is due west and the green line is north, and the opposite of north is south, anyone can see that even though the sun is traveling due west around that yellow circle, position 4 has to be southwest of positions 0 and 1, relative to position 0 or solar noon, because it is the farthest away opposite of the north green line. That's position 4 northwest, that's southwest, away from north. That's how the sun moves from 0 north solar noon to west-southwest of New Zealand's sunset, while still giving everyone in Madagascar and South Africa on a latitude ring inside of New Zealand or north of New Zealand a 90-degree zenith solar noon straight overhead later that same exact day. And that is how that same sun can come around north of New Zealand on the inside yellow northern latitude ring over Rio de Janeiro in South America at 90 degrees zenith solar noon straight over their Latin heads while New Zealand is having their nighttime. But then when it gets to here, New Zealand's next day's sunrise, be coming at New Zealand from the east-southeast. Because relative to their solar noon, that green line is northeast of them, and that yellow line the sun is traveling around is clearly coming at their solar noon intersect from further away from that green line, or southeast of it, between hours 3 and 4, and sure as shit curves back towards the green line to end up north of them at their next day's solar noon, just like this. You? Not so much. Of course, I already explained this in the beginning of part 1 for those with eyes to see and brains that still function, but because New Zealand there in red is south or on an outside latitude ring farther out from the north than the ecliptic belt that the sun never leaves in yellow, no matter what day of the year, their solar noon will always be due north of them on a compass, whether the sun is here December 21st or way up here June 21st. The closest the sun will ever be to them on any given day in that yellow belt is here, due north. It will never go behind them, where they have to turn around behind them to what we are falsely programmed to think of as south on a compass to see their solar noon. The rising sun is not coming from a northern latitude ring inside that red circle closer to the North Pole than at New Zealand's solar noon, and it is not setting in a latitude ring in that red circle closer to the North Pole than New Zealand's solar noon. So it can't get any more norther from New Zealand than its closest solar noon point there. So angularly speaking, it is coming from the opposite southeast of due north solar noon, peaking in due north at solar noon, and setting in the opposite farthest southwest of closest north solar noon. Our globe indoctrination makes us think of south as just one direction. On the globe, if 360 people at the North Pole all head due south 1 degree longitude apart from each other, they all end up at the exact same place, there. There is only one south on the globe. On the flat Earth, they all end up scattered around the ice ring with no Uber lift home, because there are infinite souths fanning out in a circle from the one North Pole. Gleason felt there was even more to the story. And again, I'm not claiming or agreeing this is how it is or how it works, only showing you how it could work where it can't work on a globe. The globies themselves say it is computed that the sun's rays lose nearly 1/4 their brilliancy by passing through the Earth's atmosphere, and if that atmosphere, alleged to be 45 miles, extended 15 times as far from the surface as it does, or 675 miles, we should receive no light at all from the sun, but should be plunged into perpetual night or darkness. Remember that. Light penetrates the rare body, like hot or dry air, further than the denser, like cold or moist air. It also passes through the more transparent more readily than through the less transparent. Anyone outside on a cloudy day or foggy morning versus a sunny, cloudless day can attest to this. Heat expands or rarefies air, and cold condenses it. The southern atmosphere is more transparent or rarefied than the northern atmosphere, meaning light penetrates farther through the air in the south. Thus, the tropical or equatorial air is expanded more and rare than the cold Arctic and also the cold Antarctic. So Gleason surmised when the sun is here on the red equator ring on both the March 21st and September 21st spring and fall equinoxes, even though the sun's light should shine in a full round circle around it, Because the atmosphere in the Arctic inner circle and Antarctic outer ice wall circle are so cold they are condensed and the sun's light cannot penetrate their air, while the much hotter and rarefied air between the warm tropics and a little further each way outside allows the light to penetrate further, hence making this bean shape in yellow instead of a perfect circle. Its light is able to expand through the rarefied air east and west around the circle in the bean shape, but not the cold and condensed air north or inside circle or south, the ice ring circle. And since the outer or southern air is more rarefied than the northern, the most light would penetrate farthest from the source sun in the southern latitude rings, the long green arrow, which could also explain why Lake Pukaki, New Zealand, who is still having hot 72 degrees Fahrenheit or 22 Celsius days in March and September, like Denmark's hottest summer days in June in the condensed northern hemisphere air, despite the sun provably being way far north of them on the red equator ring, could have the light preceding the actual sun appearing to come in from the southeast and leave in the southwest, because the sun's preceding and trailing light is penetrating farther in the southern rarefied air. The sun's light is almost as far south as the ice wall there, and that same ice wall is clearly south of New Zealand there. So is that preceding light not approaching New Zealand from the southeast? And that light hasn't even fully penetrated the ice shelf yet. Whereas this same effect would be even more pronounced on the December 21st winter solstice, which is actually hot summer for New Zealand, when the sun is still north of New Zealand, but even more south of the equator on the Tropic of Capricorn ring, meaning even more hot air and rarefied air for the south, and allowing even more southern light to get through on its way to and from New Zealand at sunrise and sunset, this time penetrating even into the ice shelf itself, not just outside of it like the equinoxes. Now imagine the mental globe gymnastics it takes to look at Ujjain, India there, on the northern inner Tropic of Cancer, just south below the sharp peninsula of Dubai there, in June, on the June 21st summer solstice, having their solar noon 90 degrees zenith straight above their head, proving the sun is indeed traveling east-west across the Tropic of Cancer. And there's Lake Pukaki, New Zealand, way down south of the Tropic of Cancer and way southeast of Ujjain, India there on a globe. So after Pukaki's sunset, the sun is provably still moving northwest away from Lake Pukaki. Southwest of them on a globe would be the sun putting on the brakes and shooting straight down there past Fantasy Island. Yet here's Lake Pukaki, New Zealand on the same day in June, the 21st, the northern summer solstice, doing exactly that, having their receding sunlight after sunset moving west-southwest of them to south-southwest of them. This is obviously more than ludicrously impossible on a globe, without the globe suddenly spinning south to north 90 degrees to make the visual sun shoot north to south 90 degrees and killing everyone instantly with cataclysmic tidal waves and earthquakes every day this provably happens. But again, it works fine theoretically on the physical flat earth Gleason model, with the sun's preceding and following light still reaching, approaching, and leaving New Zealand from farther south outside latitude circles than the actual visible sun itself, provably north of New Zealand. I think Gleason felt the cake eaters of his day were confusing the source of light, the sun, or like this flashlight, with the actual light projection coming from it. In this analogy, this flashlight never leaves the center of the room, but since its light beam is crepuscular, it would be approaching and leaving certain objects slightly from their south as it turns, like this. but they say it must be the guy holding the flashlight walking out towards them on an angle. Well, couldn't that also happen on a globe? Not when they contradictorily claim their alleged poles from 80 to 90 degrees north and south latitude still receive oblique 40% incidental sunlight radiation of equatorial regions, accounting for an alleged 24-hour south polar sun despite the cold and actually causing the cold, not deflecting around the cold towards the center of their alleged globe. Sorry, that's called having your cake and eating it too. Gleason's book is riddled with chapters, Bible passages, Antarctic voyages, etc., and even this on his own map under the December 21st solstice. On December 21st, the sun moves around the Tropic of Capricorn and during the day lights up the southern portion of the Earth from the Antarctic Circle to some portion of the Antarctic ice, as he illustrates here. But then he says, there is no sunlight beyond 80 degrees south latitude, but unknown regions of ice. Coincidentally, that just happens to be exactly that blue latitude ring where I showed you there are no bases further outside of, other than the highly dubious alleged Amundsen-Scott South Pole base, and the same exact latitude where all of the early explorers said there was an impenetrable ice barrier, and the same latitude the globe calls the southern pole of inaccessibility, and the same latitude where Dome Fuji Base is parked 150 miles north of on one of these dome walls, but either won't or can't go any further for some reason, and Google's satellites magically won't let us see what is beyond that to the alleged South Pole, apparently thinking grayed out boxes with their logo is somehow more important than taking pictures of the alleged mysterious South Pole. And the same latitude where the ice wall indents in from the ocean and there are no Antarctic bases, nor have there ever been. In the same time zone, Fantasy Island draws bulging out into the ocean as where they are hiding 3 hours of time in the north, and we're to believe this is all just one big coincidence? No light at all is a far cry from this alleged 24-hour globe sun that nobody can even agree on when it happens within days or weeks of each other. The New York Post recently ran an article about living in Antarctica. Their expert, Byron Adams, a Brigham Young professor of biology who has spent several stretches at McMurdo Base, usually staying for 2 or 3 months, assures us that the sun at McMurdo fully rises once in October and sets in March? How many times has this guy been there? March? There's McMurdo. Allegedly, the 24-hour sun ends February 20th or February 19th, nearly 2 weeks before March. The only base that allegedly gets a March sunset is the dubious Amundsen-Scott South Pole base, allegedly 860 miles south of McMurdo. Why can't these people ever get their stories straight? Now, there is another glaring problem we need to address based on what these sunglass-wearing guys experienced at what they at least believed to be Union Glacier Station. I've already explained in part 1 why I think there could very possibly be a 24-hour sun in a certain Goldilocks sweet spot right around the ice shelf that can be experienced in certain places in that zone, but not outside of it, in line with Gleason's proposal that there is total darkness outside of 80 south latitude, and not north of it, which is where we find the bases on the Antarctic Peninsula that admit no 24-hour sun for bases there. And again, like Gleason, that explanation does not allow for a 24-hour sun past 80 degrees south latitude any more than a satellite dish allows for the receiver to pick up a bouncing signal any closer than a specific spot. I will say that Gleason's theory about the hypercold condensed air stopping light from going any further even refracting it east or west like the jelly bean, mixed with the modern understanding that light slows down passing through glass or water and speeds up after, could maybe even make something like a condensed air atmospheric movie screen at 80 south latitude there in the blue line that contributes to this phenomenon. Union Glacier is allegedly only 20 miles north of there at 79 degrees 45 minutes south latitude. So for those in the Dave Weiss Marty Leeds camp that the 24-hour sun was fake plasma tech projected there, the perfect sky to do it on is only 20 miles away, according to Gleason's theory.
The Antarctic can also be unbelievably beautiful, with refracted light causing false suns and moons.
And it's incredibly bright there. I mean, you have to wear sunglasses. I don't like sunglasses. I don't like the average sunglasses. You have to wear them.
It's like impossible to step outside without them.
Yeah, bro. You like 10
Just
seconds.
white everywhere.
Yeah,
right?
10 seconds. You feel like you can't see. And they're like, your eyeballs will get sunburned. You need to wear them. And I'm like, nah. Yeah, I'm not wearing sunscreen. I'm not wearing sunglasses. I was there for 5 minutes. And I'm like, all right, you got me. I mean, it's crazy bright there, bro. Every angle. But yeah.
There is not one sunglass-wearing picture from any of Scott's, Amundsen's, or Shackleton's teams, nor mention in their journals of a 24-hour sun, nor getting sunburned eyeballs or vision problems, and they were all allegedly there in the exact same times and months, including December, when the final experiment was in Union Glacier. In fact, Scott's journal on December 31st says at 10 p.m. there was just enough light to write or work with. On January 25th, the sun showed during breakfast, and there was just enough light to see their old track. The whole journal is riddled with talk of tonight and the next day, and how temperatures drop to extreme cold in the nights. In a 24-hour sun full of eyeball-burning light? If they get so sweaty marching, why not march in the colder night and camp and relax and dry off in the daytime and late evening sun if you have a 24-hour sun? It just doesn't add up. As for the coastal bases in Part 2 alleging 24-hour suns, which I have mapped out on the bottom in red dots, I have already proven during November and December to December 21st, the sun is passing over that orange zone north of the Tropic of Capricorn until it reaches Capricorn December 21st on the solstice and goes no further south. I have also proven the sun is over the equator on the September 21st equinox, so that is 91 days between to make the 1,032.7 miles of the 23.4 degrees between the equator and the tropics, meaning the sun is moving 11.35 miles closer per day to both Capricorn and those bases. Aside from Rothera, there on an inlet bay, they are all coastal bases on near sea level. You can see here again for yourself, meaning there are no mountains or elevation between them and the sun north of Capricorn, just level ocean. Even with Rothera and Vernadsky bases here on the globe model, alleging to have land between them and the sun as it passes over in late November way up north of the Tropic of Capricorn at 44 degrees altitude in their solar noon sky, the only mountains between them in that yellow range vary from only 240 meters at the lowest height to only 2,261 meters at the tallest, there, or only 1.4 miles high. 116 miles north of Rothera, which cannot possibly be blocking their daily sunlight, especially when more than 1/3 of that mountain would be buried under 0.42 miles of alleged Earth curve core arc. Sorry, cake eaters. And since I've already proven Fantasy Island cannot exist, these bases would really be orientated like this, as on the Gleason map, with the mountains now behind them and not even between them and the sun, passing north of the Tropic of Capricorn. Just like those other 4 bases there. The problem for both the globe and the flat Earth model incorporating that sun traveling north of Capricorn as an actual physical thing and not an apparent metaphysical relative frequency phenomenon as covered in part 1 is that sun is heading 11.35 miles south per day in that orange band, but Rothera and Mawson are only 56.63 miles further south in latitude than Casey, that blue line, and these are not actual base locations, just a visual to show you what minuscule latitude differences between them we are discussing. So on the globe model, if that sun is lighting up a 24-hour day in June on the north top of the globe due to both Earth tilt and position in the alleged annual elliptical orbit, then as the maximum light exposure slowly moves south through the year to light up the south bottom in December as the Earth swings around the orbit, Casey should get its alleged 24-hour sun first, since it is 56.63 miles further north of Rothera and Mawson, and the sun is moving from the north to the south from June to December. But Rothera and Mawson are allegedly getting theirs 10 to 13 days before Casey. Not only that, but with the sun moving 11.35 miles south per day, that should only take 4.98 or say 5 days difference, not 10 to 13 days. Again, I'm aware these latitudes are correct, but these bases are nowhere near each other in east-west longitude. But Rothera and Mawson should lose their alleged 24-hour sun in January before Casey to its north, as the sun would still be shining on Casey but not them, as the sun travels back north from the changing orbital and tilt angles to light up only the top of the globe again in June. Not get 9 to 11 more days of 24-hour sun than Casey. And again, with the sun now moving 11.35 miles per day north back towards the equator, that should be only a 5-day difference, not 9 to 11 days. Myrni is even worse, as it's only 44.13 miles north latitude of Rothera and Mawson in the purple line, so with the 11.35 miles per day southward moving sun, it too should get a 24-hour sun first in November, 3.88 days before Mawson and Rothera, not 6 to 8 days after them on December 5th, and the same in January. Myrni should still have a 24-hour sun for 3.88 days more than Rothera and Mawson, not ending 6 or 7 days before them on January 7th. And no, cake eaters, the sun cannot strike Rothera and Mawson 44 to 57 miles south of Myrni or Casey, but not them, for 7 to 11 days in January, while people living 2,177 miles north of them, above the Tropic of Capricorn, are experiencing the source ball of light at 90 degrees zenith straight over their heads, moving 11.35 miles north every day. You can't just pretend the sun is down here to fit your model when it's provably not. And again, I shouldn't have to point out the absurdity of two coastal bases like Rothera and Mawson on identical 67.33 south latitude having 2 days difference in alleged 24-hour sun start and stop periods, or 41 to 50 minute day length differences with no mountains but only flat ocean between them and the sun traveling north of the Tropic of Capricorn at 44 degrees altitude halfway up the sky from their horizon to their zenith. That said, it is interesting that in November in Rothera on the 29th, its preceding sunlight angle is indeed coming from the south, despite the actual sun being way up north, just north of Capricorn, at 44 degrees angle at Rothera's solar noon. Gleason would say that's because Rothera is only at 67.33 south latitude on this ice ledge, sticking out into the Atlantic Ocean, while the preceding Capricorn sun's light is penetrating almost into 80 degrees south latitude. So not the sun itself, but its approaching light, there, is still behind Rothera, or south of it, or away from north, even though the following sun behind that light is north, or in front of Rothera, on the Tropic of Capricorn. But again, just like the heliocentric globe model assumes the sun is an actual thing, a burning ball of hydrogen and helium 93 million miles away, neurographics not to scale, many, but certainly not all of the flat Earth models also blindly assume the sun is an actual thing, like you could fly up there and touch it like your kitchen counter if it didn't burn you up. Only Gleason said both that thing and Polaris were 1,725 nautical miles or 1,985 miles away from our ground. And I've heard flat Earth models ranging from much closer, absurdly mistaking obvious converging and counter-diverging visual perspective for actual cloud level, to up to 3,000 miles away, which can't verify for certain a source versus a converging then diverging focal point. But what if it's not a physical thing at all, but metaphysical, like a rainbow you can see but can't land your plane on and will move away as you try to get closer? Or like the wind you can feel on your face, see it blowing the trees, and even harness its energy, but you can't catch the wind and put it in a bottle.
The southern hemisphere has its own rotation, and the north has its own rotation. But the northern hemisphere rotation is mirroring its rotation out to the south, everywhere around the south. This is why in star trail photography, someone can stand on a meridian, because every man is on a meridian line north to south. He can stand anywhere on here and film a rotation, a star rotation. Well, he's only getting a rotation because there's a permanent vortex which rotates the whole system right hidden in the centre Arctic. Its vortex is always turning 15 degrees per hour. So you can film out here, you're getting a mirrored image. All the ancients have mentioned mirrors hundreds of thousands of times. You're getting a mirrored rotation, a circular motion of stars. Okay, but that's on a fixed tripod for star trailing. But if you had if you're tracking a star, you'll find the star's moving because the whole clock's moving. This is turning, so it's turning the star. The whole star's moving right around the Earth in the southern hemisphere. So one rotation in here is one rotation all the way around here. But if you're just fixed in your little time zone, let's say you're really ignorant and don't know there's another part of the world existing, you're just going to see your star rotation here and you think, well, that's it. 15 degrees per hour is mirroring this 15 degrees per hour here. But if you're a thinker and you've got a mind, a full one, activated, you'll find that this star here is moving this way 15 degrees. At the same time, you're getting a star trail moving in a circle here 15 degrees per hour. Okay? And this, you've got the northern hemisphere, you've got them going like this, okay? This is slowly winding in right up to this point here. Okay? Where they become balanced. And you've got all the extra stars in here forming the new constellations. As it's moving up like this, they're overlaying these stars here. There's always this overlay, and that's how we get the new constellations. They're moving in and out from here, from the south to the north. The northern stars are always there. The southern stars are actually the same stars as the northern stars, but they're inside out. They're inverted, seen backwards, and as they move out, they expand bigger and bigger. Like this. This is what's happening. I've drawn it down here. There's the real sun's back here, and he doesn't go far, he doesn't go anywhere, he's stuck in there maimed. He just does circles. And then then they talk about the sun we see out here between between the fields, because that's where the electrical charge is created, between here and here, bingo, and the changing magnetic field moves the sun around the earth, right? Moving magnetic field moves the electrical current. The moving electrical current changes the magnetic field, because as the sun's moving, the field changes, boom. Lift this one, sun moves here, oh, boom. Oh, bang. Sun's there, oh, bang. It's changing there, bang, 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 bang. Infinitely to create the sun, the spark, the charge. I can see everything moves around from the south, east, north, and back around this way. Okay, everything moves like that on my meridian. The whole cycle. Everybody, no matter where they are around the earth, is on a meridian, and they will see that mirrored projection from the north, that cardinoid shape. Well, they don't see it actually, but they. Certain times of the year, you know everything's coming more south. And you know, it's just the way it works. It all makes sense. It goes like this and does a loop here and then comes back out again. You never see the loop because the loop represents the sunny side where the stars have spun around the sun, close to the sun. Because it's all balanced within this vortex, you see. So it spins around and into the center here. But it's just one S cycle. Like this. Okay, so it comes out and goes back in, and this is the daylight hours, where it's close to the centre of the sun, because the sun is in the centre, like I mentioned earlier, it's at the centre there. Our sun's out here, we see out here in the tropical gap, because that's the end of the Milky Way. That's the image that comes from reality. So understanding this complete separation here in the field comes about on the 17th of October. Okay? As it's receding, bang, 17th of October, the sun pops into the far south. This is the down and out in the field I was talking about earlier, where the sun is permanently around here, because all these are the pomegranates mentioned in the Bible. These represent the suns, but they're everywhere. They're infinite. It's all down and out. Okay? Then it gets drawn back in again. It follows this system. And all the system is created by the 2D plane up here. This is the flexing down and out of the ecliptic plane. Contraction, expansion. Contraction, expansion. See, it's lateral this way, it's sort of vertical in our realm, if you imagine it this way. You understand all this? All these curving magnetic field lines is part of the toroidal field. The field curves. This curve, if you're following a compass, you're traveling a curving field like this. This is why they invented the gyro laser. It takes you for a direct route, straight. Okay? The compass bearing is always curved like this. But between the tropics, it is dead straight. North to south. It's the only one place on Earth where declination is dead straight. There's no declination. It's dead south because you're on a meridian. Look, there's your south, there's your north. Or you're here, there's your south, there's your north. We've recently had these characters, Will Duffy and his comrades, liars, have travelled out here and said, oh, here's the South Pole. Or some South Pole stations out there. But no, you can leave anywhere, head south on your meridian, wherever you are on Earth. Let's say you live there or you live there. You just go travel south, there's your south. You travel south, there's the South Pole. There's the South Pole. South Pole, South Pole. It's south all the way around here. There is no one South Pole. It's a returning north, a mirrored projection of the north.
Could that explain approaching sunlight from the south and even a 24-hour sun in parts of Antarctica? Is there really a 24-hour sun anywhere in Antarctica? Or was it friggin' laser beams? I don't claim to know what the luminaries are, or all the workings of their wonders, mystery, and glory. But the ground under my feet, and every engineering project in history built on it, tells me it can't work like this. So that's the end of that.